The vast halls of the Zyran Imperial Palace stretched endlessly, decorated with shimmering blue crystals and floating holograms displaying the royal insignia. It was a place of power, tradition, and strict order. And now, for the first time in history, a human had been assigned to guard the royal family. Ethan Cross stood in the grand chamber, his posture firm, his expression unreadable. He had seen countless battlefields before, war-torn colonies, corporate skirmishes, high-stakes security details. But this was different. He wasn't protecting diplomats or CEOs. He was here to guard Princess Velara and Princess Licia, the twin daughters of the Zyran High Chancellor. The Zyran were an advanced alien race, known for their tall, elegant figures and shimmering silver-blue skin. They considered humans unpredictable, even reckless. Many in the Zyran court believed that hiring a human as a bodyguard was an insult to their warrior traditions. And the way they looked at Ethan now, with silent judgment, made that clear. A towering Zyran officer with sharp black eyes stepped forward, his voice deep and commanding. "You are the human warrior." Ethan gave a short nod. "Ethan Cross. I was told I would meet the princesses." The officer scoffed. "You were told? Humans give orders now." Ethan didn't react. He had dealt with this kind of hostility before. Instead, he stood his ground. "I follow orders. Your High Chancellor assigned me this duty." The officer narrowed his eyes but said nothing more. Instead, he turned toward the large silver doors at the end of the chamber. With a wave of his hand, the doors slid open. Inside, two figures stood waiting. Princess Velara was dressed in flowing white and blue robes, her long silver hair tied in a royal braid. She had an air of grace, her every movement precise, calculated. She was the more diplomatic of the two sisters, known for her intelligence and political skills. Beside her, Princess Licia wore a combat suit, her arms crossed, her stance almost challenging. Unlike her sister, she had always been more aggressive, more restless. While Velara played the political game, Licia had trained with the royal guards, preparing for war. They both studied Ethan carefully. "So, this is the human," Licia said, tilting her head. "He doesn't look like much." Ethan met her gaze. "I hear that a lot." Velara sighed. "Sister, let's not be rude." She turned to Ethan. "You were highly recommended, Mr. Cross, but you must understand, this is not a normal position. Our security is complicated." "I figured that much when I was assigned here," Ethan replied. "If someone needs protecting, that means someone else wants them gone." A brief silence followed. Ethan wasn't wrong. Licia smirked. At least he understands that much. Before Ethan could say anything else, a loud alarm suddenly rang through the palace. The lights flickered red, and the officer who had insulted Ethan earlier quickly placed a hand on his weapon. "An attack?" Velara asked, her voice sharp. One of the guards checked his wrist device. Unauthorized movement detected in the eastern wing. Possible assassination attempt. Ethan's instincts took over immediately. He stepped forward. "Where are they now?" The guard hesitated, as if unsure whether to answer a human. Velara noticed this and spoke instead. "Close. Too close." Licia's hand went to her sidearm, but Ethan raised a hand. "Let me handle this." Velara frowned. "Alone." Ethan checked his weapon, a compact plasma pistol, and gave a confident nod. "You hired me for a reason. Let's see if I was worth it." Before anyone could protest, Ethan was already moving. The eastern wing of the palace was quiet, too quiet. Ethan moved swiftly, his eyes scanning every shadow. The Zyran security forces were excellent soldiers, but their reliance on advanced scanners had made them predictable. A skilled assassin could bypass their technology. Ethan relied on something simpler: experience. He noticed a slight shimmer in the air, a faint distortion. Cloaking tech. Without hesitation, he raised his weapon and fired. A sharp alien cry echoed as the cloaked assassin flickered into visibility. Accordion, one of the many enemies of the Zyran Empire. Before the assassin could react, Ethan moved in, grabbing the enemy's wrist and twisting it violently. The assassin's blade dropped to the floor. The Cordian hissed, struggling, but Ethan pressed the muzzle of his pistol to its head. "Who sent you?" The assassin snarled but said nothing. Suddenly, more movement. 2 more assassins emerged from the shadows, their weapons drawn. Ethan had only a split second to act. Instead of retreating, he lunged forward. He used the first assassin as a shield, absorbing the plasma fire before throwing the body aside and returning fire. 1 down. The second assassin rushed him with a blade. Ethan ducked low, dodging the attack before slamming his elbow into the attacker's throat. The alien stumbled back, gasping for air, and Ethan finished the fight with a single precise shot. All 3 assassins neutralized. A moment later, Zyran guards rushed in. Too late. Ethan holstered his weapon, looking at the officer who had doubted him earlier. "Took your time." The officer's expression was unreadable, but there was something new in his gaze. Respect. Vilara and Licia arrived next, their eyes widening at the scene. "You handled 3 assassins alone?" Vilara asked, clearly impressed. Licia folded her arms, her smirk returning. Maybe the human isn't useless after all. Ethan shrugged. "Not my best work." For the first time, Vilara smiled. "Perhaps you were worth hiring." Ethan nodded. "Looks like I'm staying then." But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. If an assassination attempt had already happened on his first day, things were going to get much worse. The Zyran palace was in chaos after the assassination attempt. Guards rushed through the halls, checking every corner, searching for any more hidden threats. Security drones floated overhead, scanning every life form in the vicinity. Despite the commotion, Ethan Cross remained calm. He stood near the royal sisters, his sharp eyes watching everything. He had done his job, neutralized the assassins before they could reach the princesses. But even after proving himself, he could still feel the cold stares from the Zyran guards. They didn't trust him. "You should have waited for the guards," a familiar deep voice growled behind him. Ethan turned to see the same Zyran officer from before, his black eyes full of disapproval. "You acted recklessly, human." Ethan crossed his arms. "Reckless. I stopped the assassins before they could reach the princesses. You should be thanking me." The officer stepped forward, towering over him. "You took a risk that could have endangered them." Before Ethan could respond, Princess Licia let out a sharp laugh. "Oh, come on, General Xarin. You saw what he did. 3 assassins, taken down alone. That's better than your guards did." Xarin's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Princess Vilara gave a small sigh. "Regardless of the methods, the fact remains, Ethan protected us. And this attack proves that the threat is real." She turned to Ethan. "Do you have any idea who sent them?" Ethan thought for a moment. The assassins were Cordians. That means someone hired them. Cordians don't work for free. Vilara nodded. "Which means our enemies are willing to pay well to see us dead." Licia smirked. "Then it's a good thing we have a human on our side now, isn't it?" Ethan couldn't tell if she was mocking him or actually praising him. A new home, a new battle. Hours later, Ethan was shown to his quarters. The room was simple but functional: a bed, a weapons locker, and a holoscreen displaying security feeds from around the palace. Zyran technology was sleek and efficient, but something about this place felt hostile. Ethan had been on many assignments before, but this was different. Here, he wasn't just an outsider. He was an unwanted presence. He could feel it in the way the guards looked at him, the way the servants avoided him. A soft chime echoed through the room. Someone was at the door. Ethan grabbed his sidearm, just in case, before opening it. To his surprise, Princess Licia stood there, arms crossed, a smirk on her face. "Expecting another assassin?" she asked. Ethan shrugged. "Always better to be prepared." Licia stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. She glanced around. unimpressed. They gave you the small quarters. Figures. Ethan leaned against the wall. Something tells me you didn't come here just to admire my living space. Licia turned to him, her eyes sharp. I came because I have a question. Ethan waited. She took a step closer. Why did you accept this job? You're human. You could be working for any security force in the galaxy. Why risk your life for aliens who don't even trust you? Ethan studied her carefully. For all her confidence, there was something else in her gaze. Curiosity. Maybe even doubt. He gave a small shrug. I don't do this for trust. I do this because I'm good at it, and whether your people like it or not, you need someone who can actually protect you. Licia raised an eyebrow. You think my people are weak? Ethan shook his head. No, I think they're too predictable. That's why the assassins got this close. That's why you need someone who doesn't think like the enemy expects. For a moment, Licia said nothing. Then, to his surprise, she grinned. You know, I think I might actually like you, human. Ethan smirked. I'll take that as a compliment. Just then, his holoscreen flashed red. The security alert. Ethan and Licia turned to the screen. The palace security system had detected movement near the royal vault, one of the most secure areas of the palace. Licia's smirk disappeared. That's not good. Ethan grabbed his weapon. Let's go. Without hesitation, Licia followed him. The vault intruder. When Ethan and Licia arrived at the royal vault, Villara was already there, along with several guards. The entrance was sealed shut, but security sensors had picked up a life form inside. The guards were trying to override the lock, but the system wasn't responding. Zarin, the Zyran general, looked frustrated. The intruder must have hacked the security panel from inside. We can't open it. Ethan stepped forward. Do we have visuals? One of the guards pulled up a holo projection. It displayed a lone figure standing in front of a large containment unit inside the vault. The figure wore a dark cloak, their face hidden. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Who is that? Villara's expression was serious. I don't know, but whatever they're after, it's dangerous. Ethan turned to the guards. Get that door open. Now. Zarin scowled. You don't give orders here, human. Ethan ignored him. Every second we waste gives that intruder more time to escape. Licia smirked. For once, I agree with him. The guards worked faster, but before they could override the system, the holoscreen flickered. The intruder turned towards the camera, and suddenly, a voice echoed through the security system. You are too late. A loud explosion shook the palace as the vault door was blown open from the inside. Smoke and fire erupted from the entrance, and Ethan instinctively pulled Villara and Licia behind cover. The moment the dust settled, a dark figure emerged from the vault, carrying something. Ethan's eyes locked onto the object. It was a strange, glowing artifact, pulsing with energy. The intruder vanished in a flash of blue light. Teleportation. Villara cursed. They got away. Ethan clenched his fists. He had only been here for one day, and already someone had broken into the palace, stolen something important, and disappeared. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. Then we find them, he said. And we get it back. The royal vault was in ruins. Smoke still lingered in the air, and the walls were scorched from the explosion. Guards rushed in, securing the area, but the damage had already been done. Ethan stood beside Princess Licia and Princess Villara, his eyes locked on the shattered remains of the security system. The intruder had vanished with the stolen artifact, and now Ethan had only one thought in mind: track them down. Villara turned to General Zarin, her voice sharp. Tell me you have a way to follow them. Zarin's face was tense. We are scanning the area for any teleportation signatures, but this technology is advanced. It doesn't leave a clear trail. Ethan stepped forward. There's always a trail. Zarin narrowed his eyes. And you think a human can find it when our best trackers cannot? Ethan smirked. I don't think. I know. He knelt near the wreckage, examining the ground where the intruder had disappeared. His experience as a bodyguard and soldier told him one thing: no one vanishes without a trace. Using his wrist scanner, he activated a thermal scan. The screen flickered before displaying faint heat signatures, residual energy from the teleportation. It led toward the palace's outer docking bay. There, Ethan said, pointing to the path. They didn't teleport off-world. They're still in the palace. Licia grinned. Then let's go catch them. A hunt in the docking bay. Ethan, Licia, and Velara moved quickly, their boots echoing through the dimly lit corridors of the palace. Security forces followed behind, weapons ready. The docking bay was massive, with sleek Zyran starships parked in neat rows. But most of the bay was empty. This late at night, very few ships were active. Ethan scanned the area, his instincts sharp. They'll need a fast escape. Look for small ships, personal crafts. Velara pointed toward the far end of the bay. There's a restricted section for high-security transports. If they're stealing something important, they might have a ship waiting there. The group moved silently, weaving between ships. Ethan signaled for the guards to fan out, creating a perimeter. Then he saw it. A black, unmarked vessel, sleek, fast, and unlike any Zyran design. The boarding ramp was down, and a shadowy figure was sprinting toward it. There they are, Licia shouted. Ethan didn't hesitate. He broke into a full sprint, his heart pounding. The intruder was fast, but Ethan was faster. As the figure reached the ramp, they spun around. A masked alien, clad in dark armor. They raised a weapon, aiming at Ethan, but Ethan was already in motion. He rolled to the side, dodging the energy blast, and fired his own weapon. The shot hit the ramp's control panel, causing sparks to fly. The intruder cursed in an unknown language and lunged at Ethan instead. Ethan met them head-on, hand-to-hand combat. The intruder was skilled. Their movements were quick, precise, military training. Ethan barely dodged the first strike before countering with a punch to the ribs. The alien stumbled back, but recovered quickly, slamming an elbow into Ethan's shoulder. Pain shot through his arm, but he gritted his teeth and kept fighting. Ethan grabbed the intruder's wrist, twisting it sharply. The alien hissed in pain, dropping their weapon. Ethan kicked it aside and went for a takedown. But just as he pinned the intruder to the ground, the alien activated a hidden blade on their wrist and slashed toward Ethan's chest. Ethan barely dodged. The blade grazed his armor, cutting deep into the fabric. Enough. Licia and Velara rushed forward, weapons drawn. The intruder tensed, realizing they were surrounded. Then, with a flick of their wrist, they pressed a small device on their belt. A flash of blue light erupted. Ethan's vision blurred. And in an instant, the intruder was gone. A new threat. Silence filled the docking bay. Ethan cursed under his breath, scanning the area. The teleportation signature was different this time, more controlled, more precise. They must have had a second escape plan, Velara muttered. Licia crossed her arms. Well, that was annoying. Ethan exhaled sharply. Whoever this intruder was, they were more than just a common thief. Their combat skills, their teleportation tech, this was professional work. Zarin arrived moments later, looking furious. You let them escape again. Ethan shot him a glare. We slowed them down. That's more than your guards did. Zarin scowled, but said nothing. Velara turned to Ethan. Can we track them again? Ethan fought for a moment. The intruder had made one mistake. They left behind their weapon. He picked it up, examining the markings. The design was unfamiliar, but there was a symbol etched onto the grip, a crest he had seen before. This isn't Zyran technology, he said. It's from the Draken Syndicate. Velara's expression darkened. That's bad. Ethan looked at her. Who are they? Licia sighed. A dangerous group of mercenaries, assassins, bounty hunters, and thieves. If they have the artifact, it means someone very powerful hired them. Ethan tightened his grip on the weapon. Then we need to find out who. Velara nodded. Agreed. And if the Draken Syndicate is involved, we'll need more than just palace security. Ethan smirked. Good thing you have me, then. Lycia grinned. Now I know I like you. For the first time, Ethan felt something shift. He wasn't just an outsider anymore. He was part of something bigger. And he wasn't going to let the princesses down. Ethan stood in the dimly lit war room of the royal palace, his eyes scanning the holographic display in front of him. The Draken Syndicate, a name he had only heard in whispers, was now their biggest threat. Velara and Lycia stood beside him, their expressions serious. General Xarin, still skeptical of Ethan's abilities, crossed his arms. You say this weapon belongs to the Draken Syndicate. Do you have proof? Ethan held up the stolen blaster, turning it to show the etched crest on the grip. This symbol is theirs, and if you've dealt with them before, you know they don't leave their weapons behind unless something went wrong. Velara nodded, which means they weren't expecting resistance. Lycia smirked, and I'm guessing they really weren't expecting a human to fight back. Ethan chuckled. Probably not. But his amusement faded quickly. The problem is, the Draken Syndicate doesn't just steal for themselves. They work for someone else. If they wanted that artifact, it means someone hired them. Xarin frowned. And how do you suggest we find out who? Ethan tapped the weapon. Simple. We follow the only lead we have. The black market contact. The royal guards tracked the weapon's energy signature to a black market dealer in the underbelly of the city. Ethan, Lycia, and Velara disguised themselves in dark cloaks, blending into the crowded streets of Nizara district. The air smelled of spice and oil, and neon lights flickered from broken signs. Stay close, Ethan muttered as they entered a dingy cantina. The room was filled with smugglers, bounty hunters, and criminals of all kinds. At the back of the room, a blue-skinned alien with 6 eyes sat behind a table, counting credits. Ethan recognized him from the palace records. Vexer, an arms dealer with connections to the Draken Syndicate. Ethan walked up to the table and dropped the stolen weapon onto it. Where did this come from? Vexer's 6 eyes blinked in surprise, but he quickly recovered. I don't answer questions for free, human. Ethan leaned in, his voice cold. I'm not asking. I'm telling. Vexer chuckled. Tough guy, huh? He gestured to the guards behind him. You're outnumbered. Velara sighed dramatically. Do we always have to do this the hard way? Before Vexer could react, Lycia slammed her energy blade into the table, cutting it in half. The entire cantina went silent. Ethan smirked. Now let's try that again. Where did this weapon come from? Vexer swallowed hard. All right. It was given to me by a Draken enforcer named Cal Vols. He's one of their best. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Where do we find him? Vexer hesitated. Velara leaned in, her voice dangerously sweet. You really don't want me to ask twice. Vexer sighed. He's meeting a client at Dock 17 tonight. That's all I know. Ethan stood up. Then that's where we're going. The ambush at Dock 17. The 3 of them arrived at Dock 17 just before midnight. The docks were quiet, only a few cargo workers moving in the distance. Ethan motioned for Lycia and Velara to stay hidden behind a stack of crates while he crept forward. A tall, armored figure stood near a small ship, speaking to a hooded client. Cal Vols, the Draken Syndicate's best enforcer. Ethan activated his comms earpiece. We need to hear what they're saying. Velara pulled out a small surveillance drone, releasing it into the air. It hovered silently, capturing the conversation. The job was risky, Cal was saying, but the artifact is secured. The hooded figure nodded. Good. The employer will be pleased. Ethan frowned. The employer? That meant someone higher up was pulling the strings. Cal continued. We'll transport it to Outpost X9 for the handoff. Ethan whispered into the comms. That's our next target. But first, let's take him down. Licia grinned. I was hoping you'd say that. She threw a flash grenade into the middle of the dock. A blinding light erupted, followed by chaos. Ethan rushed forward, tackling Kel to the ground. The enforcer was strong, far stronger than a normal human. But Ethan was faster. He landed a solid punch to Kel's jaw, stunning him. Velara and Licia fought off the enforcer's guards, their movements precise and deadly. Kel tried to pull a weapon, but Ethan grabbed his wrist, twisting it until the blaster dropped. Then, with one final blow, Ethan knocked him unconscious. Licia smirked. That was fun. Velara tapped her comm. Guards, move in. We have our prisoner. The truth revealed. Back at the palace, Kel was interrogated. At first, he refused to speak, but Ethan knew how to handle mercenaries like him. After an hour, Kel finally broke. The employer. It's someone inside this iron government. Velara's eyes widened. You mean a traitor? Kel nodded weakly. Yes. Someone high up. They wanted the artifact stolen before the princesses could use it. Ethan glanced at Licia and Velara. That means you're in more danger than we thought. Licia crossed her arms. Then we need to find out who's behind this. Velara's eyes burned with determination. And when we do, we'll make them regret ever crossing us. Ethan smirked. Now that's a plan I can get behind. The real enemy wasn't just the Draken Syndicate. It was someone much closer to home. And Ethan was going to find out who. Ethan stood in the palace war room, staring at the unconscious form of Kel Vo, the Draken Syndicate enforcer they had captured. The truth he had revealed still echoed in Ethan's mind. There was a traitor inside this iron government. Someone powerful. Someone who wanted the princesses dead. Velara paced the room, arms crossed. We need to find out who it is. Fast. Licia leaned against the table, her expression thoughtful. If someone inside our government hired the Draken Syndicate, it means they have resources and contacts. They won't stop until they get what they want. Ethan nodded. That's why we need to move first, before they strike again. General Xarin, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. We have to be careful. If the traitor is truly powerful, they might have spies everywhere. His eyes landed on Ethan. Which means we can't trust anyone. Ethan exhaled. Then we do this the old-fashioned way. We set a trap. Setting the bait. The plan was simple. They would spread false information, a rumor that the stolen artifact had been recovered and would be transported to a secret vault. If the traitor was desperate, they would make a move. And when they did, Ethan would be waiting. That night, the false information was leaked through secret palace channels. Within hours, the trap was set. The betrayal. Ethan and the princesses hid in the shadows of the palace's underground vault, watching as a group of heavily armed soldiers approached. These weren't normal palace guards. Ethan whispered into his comm, "Here they come." Velara and Licia tensed beside him. "Do you recognize them?" Ethan shook his head, but he recognized their leader. A tall figure stepped forward, removing their helmet. Counselor Wren, one of the highest-ranking officials in the Zyran government. Velara's eyes widened. It's him. Licia clenched her fists. We trusted him. Ethan kept his voice calm. Trust doesn't matter now. What matters is stopping him. Wren motioned to his soldiers. Take the artifact. Now, Ethan stepped forward, gun raised. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Wren smirked. Ah, the human bodyguard. You're more trouble than you're worth. Ethan tightened his grip. And you're dumber than you look. Did you really think we wouldn't figure this out? Wren sighed. It's not personal. The princesses are too dangerous. If they gain control of the artifact, they will disrupt the balance of power. Velara stepped forward. So you'd rather betray your own people? Wren's expression darkened. I'd rather ensure stability. He gestured to his men. Kill them. The fight for survival. The room erupted in chaos. Ethan ducked as the first shot was fired, rolling behind a pillar. Licia drew her energy blades, deflecting incoming fire. Velara moved swiftly, taking cover while returning fire with her blaster. Ethan took down 2 soldiers with precise shots before turning to see Ren escaping through a side corridor. "He's running," Ethan shouted. Velara and Licia nodded, finishing off the last of the guards before following him. The chase. Ethan sprinted through the dark corridors of the palace, his heart pounding. Ren was fast, but Ethan was faster. The counselor reached the security door, slamming a button on the wall. The metal door began closing, but Ethan dove forward, sliding under it just before it sealed shut. Ren turned, eyes wide. "You really don't give up, do you?" Ethan smirked. "Nope." Ren pulled a hidden blade from his belt and lunged. Ethan dodged, grabbing Ren's wrist and twisting it. The blade clattered to the ground. Ren snarled, throwing a punch. Ethan caught it, countering with a knee to the gut. Ren staggered back, gasping for air. "You've lost," Ethan said. "Surrender." Ren chuckled, blood dripping from his lip. "I don't surrender." Before Ethan could react, Ren reached for a small detonator on his belt. Ethan's eyes widened. "No." Boom. A blast shook the corridor as an explosion erupted behind Ren. The force sent Ethan flying backward, slamming into a wall. When he looked up, Ren was gone, vanished into the smoke. Aftermath. Velara and Licia reached Ethan just as he was pulling himself up. "Are you okay?" Licia asked. Ethan coughed, waving away the dust. "Yeah, but Ren got away." Velara clenched her fists. "We have to stop him before he tries again." Ethan nodded. "And this time, we won't give him a chance to escape." The hunt was on. Ethan sat in the palace war room with Velara and Licia, his mind still replaying the events of the last few hours. Counselor Ren had escaped. The traitor was still out there, and time was running out. General Xarin stood at the head of the table, his expression grim. Ren has disappeared into the underground network of the city. He won't stay hidden for long, but we need to act fast before he regroups. Velara clenched her fists. "We should have stopped him back there." Licia placed a hand on her sister's shoulder. "We will stop him. We just need to find him first." Ethan exhaled. "And I think I know how." The plan. Ethan studied the data maps of the city's underground tunnels. There were hundreds of passageways, but only a few led to areas where Ren could find allies. "He's not just hiding," Ethan said. "He's planning something big." Xarin nodded. Ren had high-level access. He could have already secured weapons, transport, and reinforcements. Velara leaned in. "So where do we strike?" Ethan pointed to a hidden supply depot beneath an abandoned sector of the city. "Here. If he's gathering forces, this is the best place to do it." Licia smirked. "Then let's crash his party." Infiltration. The night was dark as Ethan, Velara, and Licia moved through the abandoned streets. The air was thick with tension. Ethan held up a hand. "Wait." He crouched near a ruined building and pointed to a hidden security drone scanning the area. "Ren's got surveillance," Ethan whispered. "We need another way in." Licia motioned toward a maintenance tunnel nearby. "That should take us underground." The group moved swiftly, slipping through the tunnel entrance and navigating the dimly lit corridors. Soon, they'd reached a large chamber filled with stolen military supplies and armed mercenaries. And at the center stood Counselor Ren. The showdown. Ren's voice echoed through the chamber. "The Zyran Empire is weak. If we don't take control now, it will fall into chaos." The mercenaries nodded in agreement, their weapons at the ready. Velara whispered, "We can't let them escape with those weapons." Ethan smirked. "Then let's cause some chaos of our own." He took out a small explosive device and tossed it toward a stack of fuel canisters. Boom! The explosion sent the mercenaries flying, creating confusion. Ethan and the princesses rushed forward. Licia drew her energy blades, cutting through enemy defenses. Valera used her blaster rifle, taking down targets with precision. Ethan moved like a shadow, disarming and taking out opponents with swift efficiency. In the middle of the chaos, Ren tried to escape. "Not this time," Ethan muttered, chasing after him. The final confrontation. Ethan cornered Ren near an exit tunnel. "You're done, Ren," Ethan said, gun aimed. Ren sneered. "You don't understand, human. This empire is falling apart. Someone had to act." Ethan shook his head. "No, someone had to betray their people. And that's exactly what you did." Ren suddenly lunged, drawing a hidden blade. Ethan dodged, countering with a hard punch to Ren's ribs. The counselor staggered, but he wasn't giving up. Ethan blocked another attack, then spun and slammed Ren against the wall. Valera and Licia arrived just in time to see Ethan twist Ren's arm behind his back, forcing him to the ground. "It's over," Valera said, her voice cold. Ren laughed bitterly. "You think you've won. There will always be more like me." Licia glared at him. "And we will stop them too." Ren and his soldiers arrived moments later, taking Ren into custody. Aftermath. Back at the palace, the tension had finally lifted. With Ren arrested, his network dismantled, and his supporters captured, the threat was neutralized. Valera turned to Ethan. "You saved our lives." "Again." Ethan smirked. "Just doing my job." Licia stepped forward. "No, you did more than that." She glanced at Valera before continuing. "You earned a place in our inner circle." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Does that mean I get a raise?" Valera chuckled. "We'll talk about that later." For the first time in a long time, Ethan felt like he belonged. But the fight wasn't over yet. One final challenge remained. Ethan stood on the balcony of the Zyran Palace, looking over the glowing city below. The night was calm, but his instincts told him something wasn't right. Valera and Licia walked up behind him. "You're restless," Valera said. Ethan sighed. "It's not over yet. Ren may be in custody, but someone helped him escape the palace in the first place. There's still a traitor among us." Licia nodded. "And whoever it is won't stop until they've taken control." Just then, a loud explosion shook the palace. The sky lit up as enemy ships descended upon the capital. "They're attacking," Valera gasped. Ethan clenched his fists. "Then let's end this." The enemy strikes. The palace alarms blared as soldiers scrambled into formation. General Xurin rushed to the command center, barking orders. Ethan, Valera, and Licia ran to the war room, where the holographic battle map showed enemy ships landing across the city. Xurin pointed at the screen. "It's a coordinated assault. They've hit key locations, power stations, communication hubs, and the royal armory." Valera's expression darkened. "It's an inside job." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Where's Ren?" Xurin sighed. "Escaped during the chaos. Someone must have freed him." Licia slammed her fist on the table. "We should have executed him when we had the chance." Ethan shook his head. "No time for regrets. We need to stop this now." Battle in the palace. The enemy soldiers broke through the outer defenses, storming the palace halls. Ethan led Valera and Licia into the fight. Blaster fire filled the corridors as the two princesses fought alongside their royal guards. Ethan moved like a shadow, dodging attacks and taking down enemies with precise shots. A massive explosion rocked the structure, sending debris crashing down. "Valera! Licia!" Ethan yelled, shielding them from the falling rubble. They coughed through the dust, barely able to see. A shadow emerged from the smoke. "Counselor Ren, you should have killed me when you had the chance." Ren sneered. He wasn't alone. Dozens of mercenaries aimed their weapons at them. Ethan stepped in front of the princesses. "You betrayed your own people. And for what?" Ren smirked. "For power. The empire is weak, but under my rule, it will become unstoppable." Licia raised her blaster. "You'll never rule anything." Ren laughed. "Then I'll burn it to the ground." He turned to his soldiers. Kill them. The turning point. Before the mercenaries could fire, a second explosion rocked the palace. The ceiling cracked, and the enemy soldiers looked around in confusion. A deep voice boomed from the palace entrance. Stand down. General Xarin and a battalion of elite Xiran warriors stormed in, opening fire on Ren's men. Ethan seized the opportunity. He dashed forward, grabbing Ren's arm and twisting it behind his back. Game over, Ethan growled. Ren struggled, but Velara pointed her sword at his throat. Surrender. Ren's eyes darted around, looking for an escape, but there was none. He slumped in defeat. You think this is the end? He hissed. More will come after me. Lycia smirked. Then we'll be ready. Victory and a new beginning. The battle was over. The remaining enemy forces surrendered, and the city was secured. Ethan, Velara, and Lycia stood in the Grand Hall, where the Royal Council gathered to restore order. Xirin approached Ethan. Your bravery saved the Empire. Ethan crossed his arms. Just another day on the job. Velara smiled. Not just any job. You protected us, fought beside us, and risked your life for our people. Lycia nodded. That makes you more than just a bodyguard. Velara stepped forward. It makes you family. Ethan blinked in surprise. Family. Velara and Lycia had exchanged glances before Velara said, We want you to stay. As our protector. As part of our inner circle. Ethan hesitated. He had always been an outsider, a hired gun. But now, for the first time, he felt like he belonged. A small smirk formed on his lips. Guess I'll need a bigger room then. Velara laughed. Consider it done. Lycia grinned. Welcome home, Ethan. As the sun rose over the city, Ethan stood with the princesses, ready for whatever came next. Because no matter what dangers lay ahead, he was no longer fighting alone. The end.